What if I told you that one of the strongest defensemen the NHL has ever seen once spent his summers hauling gravel and pouring concrete, and his winters quietly erasing the best forwards in the league? This is not a story about flashy goals or highlight reel celebrations. This is the story of Tim Horton, a kid from cold railway towns in northern Ontario, who fought his way from working-class dust to the bright lights of Toronto and paid a heavy price chasing a dream that never let him rest. Across the next few minutes, you will see how a poor construction laborer became a cornerstone of a dynasty, a national coffee brand in Canada, and a cautionary tale. Before we begin, please subscribe and turn on notifications to help us reach 1,000 subscribers. Thank you very much. He arrived in the world far from bright arenas, in a small northern Ontario town where freight trains were louder than dreams. His father worked long shifts around the railway. His mother stretched every dollar, and winter was not a season, but a way of life. Ice formed on ponds, ditches, and flooded backyards, and for a quiet boy with strong shoulders, that ice became the only place where life felt light. Off the ice, he was not always gentle. Bigger than most kids his age, he sometimes pushed them around just because he could. For a while, power felt simple. Then came the shame. Neighbors remember him slipping into church alone, week after week, asking silently for a way to be better than the boy who liked to bully. That tension never really left him. On one side was the tough kid from a working-class corner of Canada who knew how to carry weight and keep his mouth shut. On the other side was a sensitive son, worried about disappointing his parents and terrified of being trapped forever in the cold towns that seemed built only for labor and survival. As he grew older, the small town rinks could no longer hold him. Junior coaches in the mining town of Sudbury saw a strong skater who could glide through traffic without raising his voice. The next step was St. Michael's College School in Toronto, the flagship of the Toronto Maple Leafs development system. On paper, it was the perfect fit. In practice, there were problems. He was not Catholic in a school run by Catholic priests. Some people worried that bringing in a quiet kid from a railway family in northern Ontario would disturb the built culture. Then came the scouting reports. Away from the ice, he wore thick glasses to read. That was enough for some evaluators to write that his vision was suspect, that he might struggle to handle hard passes or track the puck cleanly at National Hockey League speed. For a while, doors that should have opened stayed half unlocked. Yet the same qualities that had carried him through childhood started to matter. Work ethic, humility, a body built for heavy minutes. The Toronto organization brought him into their system, but there was nothing guaranteed about the path ahead. The path to the National Hockey League was not a straight line. After a short look with the big club, he was sent down to the American Hockey League team in Pittsburgh, where bus rides were long and every shift felt like an audition. Night after night, he logged heavy minutes, killing penalties, clearing the front of the net, and learning how to make the safe play look simple. The organization started to see what they had. By his mid-20s, he was back in Toronto to stay, a steady presence on the blue line who rarely raised his voice and almost never made the kind of mistake that ends up in a headline. For a while, it felt like the hard part of his journey was over. Then came one night against New York. Chasing a loose puck, he was driven into the boards, his body folding in a way that made players on both benches fall silent. He left the ice with a broken leg and a shattered jaw. Injuries so severe that people around the league wondered if the defenseman from northern Ontario had just played his last game. When he finally came back, he did not look like someone who had barely survived a broken leg and a shattered jaw. He skated as if the collision had hammered away any hesitation left in his mind. Shift after shift, he leaned into battles, kept his feet moving, and treated the front of his own net like private property. Coaches trusted him with every difficult situation. Penalty kill, protecting a one-goal lead, closing out the final minute when building was shaking with tension. He did not rush the puck the way offensive stars would later do, but he controlled games in a quieter way, winning his battles early so that danger never had the chance to grow. Opponents felt it in their ribs, shoulders. Once he pinned a forward along the boards, he would wrap those thick arms around him and wait until the play moved elsewhere. Skaters felt stuck, as if they had been bolted into the wall. Goalies flinched when his shot left the blue line, a heavy low drive that forced them to hope for a deflection or a whistle. Through the early 1960s, he became the foundation of a dynasty. 4 times, Toronto lifted the Stanley Cup with him playing big minutes on defense. Season after season, he dressed for every game, building a streak of hundreds of consecutive appearances that made the phrase strongest man in hockey feel like a fact rather than a compliment. The paychecks were never enough to let a family relax. In the offseason, while fans imagined players on holiday, he pulled on work boots and reported to construction yards tied to the Toronto club. He drove trucks loaded with stone, helped pour foundations, and spent long days breathing dust on job sites owned by the same man who signed his hockey contracts. Neighbors told a story about a school teacher leading children past a work site and seeing a familiar defenseman in a hard hat, standing in a trench with a shovel. "That is your local hockey star," the teacher said. "If you do not stay in school, you will be digging ditches like him." The words stung. To the outside world, he looked like a laborer who happened to play hockey, not the other way around. The fear of slipping back into that life never left his mind. It pushed him to look for something beyond a salary. He tried a car dealership, a hamburger stand, a small restaurant. None of them felt secure. Then came a simple idea that matched his working-class roots: coffee and donuts. A clean, bright shop where blue-collar workers and office staff could share the same counter. He opened one store, then another, partnering with a former police officer who understood business. While he ate minutes on the blue line at night, his name spread on paper cups during the day. Time does not care about loyalty. After more than a decade anchoring the blue line in Toronto, he was traded away, an aging defenseman with scars and a reputation that still carried weight. In New York and then in Pittsburgh, he was not asked to be a star. He was asked to stabilize young rosters, to show how a professional survives an 80-game season. He embraced it. Even in his early 40s, he skated with a low, powerful stride, picked smart angles, and played the same simple, punishing style. Coaches still talked about his presence in rooms more than on the clips that never seemed to notice him. The final stop was Buffalo, where an old coach from Toronto now ran a young expansion team. The veteran was offered one more contract and a sleek sports car as a thank you for signing. For a man who had started in railway towns and gravel pits, it felt like proof that the game still needed him, even as age and pain closed in. The game in Toronto did not feel like a farewell. At 44 years old, he still logged heavy minutes, playing through pain in his jaw and ankle and being named one of the stars of the night. After the final horn, teammates showered, ate, and settled in, planning to fly back with the team the next day. He chose something different. He wanted to drive through the night to Buffalo in his sports car, alone on the highway. Family and friends urged him to stay. A late-night phone call carried the sound of slurred words, enough for his younger brother to beg him to sleep in Toronto and finish the trip in daylight. He refused. Pride, habit, and the belief that he could push through one more hard stretch won again. On the Queen Elizabeth Way, a driver saw the car streak past at frightening speed and called the police. An officer tried to catch up, but never closed the gap. Near St. Catharines, the car veered, hit the center strip, and rolled. When it came to rest, the strongest man on the blue line lay beyond the wreckage, and the road that had begun on frozen ponds in northern Ontario ended on a cold ribbon of asphalt. For decades, the official story of that night stayed blurry. There was a crash, a legendary defenseman, a dangerous highway, and a family left behind. Details about what was in his system were sealed away in files few people ever saw. Many years later, the autopsy report became public. It showed a blood alcohol level above the legal limit. It listed stimulant medications, pills that players of that era sometimes used to stay awake, cut through fatigue and squeeze more effort from bodies that had already given too much. There was no trace of strong prescription painkillers. The truth was more ordinary and more troubling. He was driving very fast, late at night, with alcohol in his blood and tablets in his pocket. From far away, it is easy to judge. Up close, it looks like a man in his mid-40s trying to hang on to a career, a growing business, and the image of reliability, using the habits his generation believed were acceptable, until the bill arrived on a dark stretch of road. None of it was heroic. Long after the crash, the record books did not forget. His number hung from the rafters. His name entered the Hall of Fame, and lists of the greatest National Hockey League defensemen still place him among the most trusted anchors a coach could send over the boards. Forwards talk about how hard it was to reach the front of the net when he was there. Goaltenders remember feeling safer the moment he stepped on the ice. Away from the rink, the other legacy kept growing. The small donut shop he helped start became a chain that now stretches across Canada, from gas stations on highways to busy corners in cities. For many people, a paper cup with his surname printed on it is part of the daily routine, an ordinary comfort with an extraordinary story behind it. The business story is not simple. His share in the company was sold after his death for a fraction of what the brand would later be worth. Lawyers argued, feelings were hurt. Yet the sign remains, glowing over parking lots in all weather, reminding people that a boy from poor railway towns built something that outlived his body, his career, and even the version of himself he tried to present to the world. In the end, he was not a superhero carved from stone. He was a son of railway towns who carried his regrets into church pews, a young bully who tried to grow softer, a defenseman who turned pain into calm plays under pressure. He was also a middle-aged man who reached for pills and late-night drives when age and expectation pressed too hard. None of that cancels out the other. It all lives together in the same story. On the ice, he remains the image of strength on the blue line, a quiet force who helped build a dynasty. Off the ice, his legacy sits on street corners and highway exits, in warm coffee and simple donuts that millions of people barely think about as they start their day. If his life says anything, it is that greatness does not erase weakness. It grows beside it. If you have a memory of him or of the places that carry his name, share it in the comments. And if you want more true stories about hockey legends who were human first, please like this video, subscribe, and turn on notifications so you will not miss the next one.